Hi everyone, this is Miss Segovia and I'm going to show you how to do your notes for cellular respiration. So in your notebook you're going to go to the page where you put your giant mitochondria on the left side, and we're going to put your notes onto the right side. So we need to set them up Cornell style, so go ahead and draw your line down the left and then give yourself a few lines at the bottom so that you can do your summary, and we can keep your avid teachers super happy. So let's start with our title. It is Cellular Respiration. I'll go ahead and zoom in here so you guys can see the notes a little bit better. So, respiration it is the process by which cells obtain energy. Process by which cells obtain energy. Now, where are they going to get the energy from? Glucose. And we can get it from other molecules too, but we mostly study glucose, oddly, because it's the most complex. So, get energy from glucose by breaking down. Little chemical reaction happening here. Simple food. Alright, so breaking down simple food molecules, such as sugar. Don't forget our other words for sugar too. We got saccharide, monosaccharide, polysaccharide, glucose, carbohydrate. But what are we going to do with that? We're going to release the stored energy. So, and releasing the stored energy. And so if you remember your carbohydrate molecules, lots of bonds in there, lots of bonds mean lots of energy. Now this form of respiration, I don't want you to confuse it with the respiration you hear for breathing. So let's add a little note to remind us here. It is not the same as the term, I can't spell, oh no, as the term respiration, which is used for breathing. Now you do have to breathe in order to be able to do the full version of cellular respiration, but don't get that confused like I inhaled and I exhaled, I have cellularly respired. It's actually happening down on the molecular level with the little teeny tiny cells themselves. So let's talk a little chemistry here. Our chemical equation for cellular respiration is C6H12O6. Hey, haven't we seen this molecule somewhere before? Let's flip back one page in your notes and look. Oh, hey, look at that, C6H12O6. Where did we get that from? Oh yeah, plants, that's right. Okay, so we've got C6H12O6. So the common word, we'll just call this our sugar. And we use oxygen. Did we see oxygen before too? Let's flip back a page real quick. Look with me here. Oh, look at, there's oxygen. Interesting. All right, so C6H12O6 plus O2, which is oxygen. Now, where did we get this? How do we get the sugar in our body? Oh, yeah, that's right. It's the food we eat. And how does oxygen come in? Oh, yeah, air we breathe. That is going to get broken down into 6 CO2 plus 6 H2O, and then we're also going to get some molecules produced of ATP. ATP, if you remember from your mitochondria that we did earlier, ATP is energy. So the whole point of cellular respiration is to harvest that energy that is inside our food molecules. So CO2 is carbon dioxide, And of course H2O, you should know, is water. And ATP is our energy. Now this, again, CO2 and H2O, have we seen this before? Oh, yep, look at that. Oh, look it. So what was on the left side here is on the right side over here. And what's on the left here is on the right side here. Cellular respiration and photosynthesis are actually a great partnership because what one produces, the other requires. So let's add a little note on here so we remember that. So notice this equation is the opposite of photosynthesis. So let's make this stand out. We'll kind of draw a little bubble around it. And this equation is so important, let's go ahead and box it. So it stands out in our notes, so when we go back to study, we pay extra close attention to it. Because you are going to see this equation come back time and time again. I need you to be really familiar with it. So while the equation may be the opposite of photosynthesis, the process unfortunately is not the opposite. So you can't like learn one and then just learn the other backwards. There's a little more to it. And there's even more to it than what you're going to learn today, because in AP biology we go into depth with the how. But for now you just need to know the what. So there are two stages to cellular respiration. Two stages of cellular respiration. So stage one is known as glycolysis. So gly you should recognize as a prefix for sugar. Lysis is the suffix for breaking down. So glycolysis happens in the cytoplasm. So in the cytoplasm, which remember is that liquidy portion of the cell, glucose is broken down into smaller molecules. So we take that huge glucose molecule and we make it tiny. Now, in that process, oxygen at this point is not involved. So we believe this actually is a pretty ancient process because it happens in pretty much all cells and there's no O2 required. And we found that on early Earth, when things first formed, there was no oxygen and they still were able to do the process of glycolysis. So oxygen is not involved and only a small amount of energy is released. We don't get a lot out of it. It's R-E-L-E-A-S-E-D. I can't talk and write at the same time. It's horrible. So a small amount of energy is released. R-E-L-E-A-S-E-D. In stage two, let's go ahead and underline our stages so they look a little bit more bolder. So in stage two, this one happens in the mitochondria, which is why on your opposite page you have a giant mitochondria. So in the mitochondria, so here we have the cytoplasm, here's the mitochondria. In the mitochondria, the molecules are broken down even further. So that means they're made even smaller than what they are to release a great deal of energy. And the energy is in the form of ATP. ATP is energy. So this process, it requires oxygen. So this process requires O2 and it releases, it lets go CO2 and H2O, aka water. Now those don't necessarily stay in your system In fact, most animals later exhale these. And exhale is a fancy word for breathe out. So during the course of your day, you eat food and inhale oxygen. Your little mitochondria takes that, breaks it down to release CO2, H2O, and harvest some energy. Now, where did that energy originally come from? Well, that actually goes back to credit our pretty little leaves. And so right here, that energy that's coming out came from the sun. And so from that solar energy, it got put into sugars. And then in cellular respiration, we take the sugars that were created and break them back down to the original components, but we harvest that energy in a new form. Now, there's one little extra tidbit I got to show you, which is what happens in stage 2 if there is no oxygen. So we got to have oxygen in stage 2. So I'm going to put a little box around here so I remember that this process requires O2, because that's real big. So if we don't have oxygen, we have a process called fermentation. So fermentation is the process that happens instead of stage 2 when no O2 is present. So this one requires O2. I'm going to put a little box here around no O2 in fermentation. So this process, this can produce lactic acid. So we see this is the burn from exercise. If you ever have gone out and done a lot of exercise and afterwards you feel like your muscles are just totally on fire, it's lactic acid because you were probably huffing and puffing and not getting enough oxygen to your cells. So the burn from exercise, put little quotes around the burn. Burn from exercise in humans, and it can also produce alcohol in yeast and sugar. I'm sorry, yeast and bacteria. It's the breaking down of sugar to produce alcohol. So yeast and bacteria. And so we actually use yeast and bacteria when we produce wines and beers and other alcohol beverages. So fermentation is the process that happens instead of stage 2 when no O2 is present. This can produce lactic acid, the burn from exercise in humans, and alcohol in yeast and bacteria. So there you have it, guys. I hope you were writing small so you could fit everything onto one page. If you went on to the next one, that's okay. But now that you've got all the notes, I need you to go through and write your questions in the left-hand column and put your summary down at the bottom. If you have any difficulty doing that, please come ask. Thanks.